very close with John and his wife, Catherine. So we got the introduction, and we're blessed today to have somebody who's written 28 books, 15 bestsellers. The Energy Bus has sold, I think it's up to, John, is it 3 million copies or something insane like that? He's a top 10 keynote speaker. He's the number one consultant to CEOs, coaches, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. He's been featured on the Today Show, CNN, CNBC, the Golf Channel. I mean, on and on and on. His clients are people like the Dodgers, Dell, Campbell Soup, Southwest Airlines, the Rams. Again, it goes on and on and on with John. He is a Cornell grad, and I'm wearing the hat today for you, John, where he played lacrosse. So we are super blessed to have John Gordon with us. Kathy, let's get it started. Thank you, Mike Perlow, for the intro. John, what'd you think?
Man, that's an intro. That's pretty impressive. Best one I've ever had. So I love it. Except that picture is like 20 years old. And I'm wondering how everyone uses that picture in all the marketing materials. We've gotten rid of it, and yet it shows up everywhere I go. So still trying to figure that out.
It lives forever on the internet, John. And I was gonna say it looks like a cardboard cutout of you, which that's like a la Heather Monahan, who sends people life-size cardboard cutouts of herself. So man, I am so excited to have you here. The impossible mission that I have is there's no way I can distill in 30 minutes 28 books that you've written that have impacted so many lives. So what I wanted to focus on in our time together was some consistent themes that I think come up time and time again when I think about you. But I guess before we get into that, I'd love to know 28 books. As somebody who's put out 4, 28 like blows my mind. And the fact that, they're basically all bestsellers is incredible. Tell us about your process, because I think I've heard that some of your books you literally write in about 3-4 weeks. Tell us a little bit about that process, and then how gratitude in your walks play a role in that.
Well, Scott, I first want to say congratulations on writing 4, or even if you've written 1. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment. To just write a book is a big deal. I remember before I wrote a book, I talked a lot about possibly writing a book, but it's actually sitting down, doing the work, and putting pen to paper, or using a typewriter or a keyboard nowadays to write the book that you're going to write, and doing it day in and day out. And that's how the book is written. For me, every book has taken about 3.5 to 4 weeks tops. The longest it's been has been about 4 weeks. And I have a process where I walk and I pray and I get ideas, and I write in the morning, and then I'll write a little bit more after that walk and prayer. And then that night I'll edit what I wrote and I'll get new and fresh ideas from the editing process. And then I'll write those notes down on a piece of paper next to where I'm writing. And I'm using a keyboard, I'm using a computer to write. And so I'm doing that, and then I'm writing ideas down. I go to bed and I wake up with new ideas. And then I'll write some more that morning, go for the walk, pray, get new ideas, write some more, and I'm done for the day. And doing that day in and day out, within 3 to 4 weeks, the book will eventually write itself and the book's written. I'll usually start with a framework and an idea like training camp. It came to me after speaking to the Atlanta Falcons during training camp. Mike Smith was the head coach. Matt Ryan was a rookie quarterback. And I left training camp and I'm in the back of a vehicle. They were driving me back to the airport. And boom, I had this idea. Training camp, a coach, a player, teacher, student, teaching the winning habits that separate the best from the rest, pursuing excellence. And as I wrote the story, I weaved in the 11 characteristics of what the best do better than everyone else. And it's really cool because Dabo Sweeney would use that book at Clemson in 2011 for his team, teaching one of those characteristics every single week. And they went from 6-7 to a 10-win season, which would then really springboard a great career and an incredible, successful program. He would then bring me in because out of the blue, they reached out to me, said, hey, we were using your book all year. Would you want to speak to our team during training camp? Now I go to 2012 to speak to training camp. And I've worked with that team every year since. But that idea for the book was about these winning characteristics. And then I wove it into the story. And I get the idea of a story and then weave the principles into the story. Other books like Power of Positive Leadership or The Power of a Positive Team, those are more how-to books. They're not fables. And those books are again, framework of what the best leaders do. Like what do great leaders do to become great? What makes a great leader? What makes a great team? What's a framework for a great team? And I'll have those principles, and then I'll weave in stories and lessons along the way. So I never knew I could write a book until I wrote one. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this. And The Energy Bus was my first fable, and it's my most popular book by far. Yeah. I think it outsells all my other books combined. Even to this day, it still hits the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. And we're talking 16 years later. It still hits the list. So it's interesting that your first fable is your best fable or your most popular. I don't think it's my best writing. I think it's my most popular book, though, because it just came to me.
They're all incredible. You brought up Clemson, and I'm a big Dabo Sweeney fan. Speaking of a Clemson alum, your daughter Jade, how proud of you are you of Jade and what she's doing?
Well,
and tell people what's going on with Jade, with your daughter.
Yeah, people ask me that all the time. You must be so proud. And Scott, it's honestly, I'm not proud. It's more like I'm amazed.
Yeah.
I'm amazed at what God could do. The miracles that can come because, my daughter was always so scared to speak and was terrified of speaking and didn't have confidence and didn't think she would ever do this. And I never thought she would do this because she was so afraid. And yet out of the blue, she reached out and said, Dad, I want to speak now. I want to do this work. And she was 24 years old and started doing it. I said, all right, start speaking to your old lacrosse team that you played for in high school. Do that first. And she did. All right, let's go do a youth group. And she did a youth group. And then she did a group of teenagers. And then she was visiting with me to Clemson. And I was asked to speak to the baseball team. And I said, all right, Jade, before I speak to this baseball team, you're going to share a principle with them. You're going to tell a story and an application. Principle, story, application is how you can give a great talk. Principle, tell a story that brings the principle to life, and then how it applies to them. She's like, no, Dad, I'm not speaking to them. I'm like, no, you are. I already talked to the coach. You could have the first 5 minutes to talk to them. And she did. And she did a great job. I was like, wow, okay. She's got it. All of a sudden, she just started speaking and it just came out. I'm like, all right, this is what, she was born to do. No doubt about it. And now she's working with Auburn Golf. She's worked with all these different companies and school districts. I mean, she's 25 and she's already given probably 50 talks now and doing great and crushing it and very impactful, very, very inspiring. We did New Core Steel not too long ago. Most of the men were in their 50s and 60s. working for leadership of the plant. And I did the keynote, then she did the workshop, and I sat in on the workshop, try not to get too involved. And she was like, okay, yes, all right, you go now, sir. Okay, explain. All right, explain more of that.
Yep.
And she's literally leading the work, and they were literally like under her thumb. Like she had them all, and they were like listening to her and following her and writing her down what she was saying. At the end, they came up to her. They're like, "You can come back. Your dad doesn't need to come back. You just come back." It was great.
The apple has not fallen far from the
From
tree.
her mom, though. Her mom's a great communicator, so I think she actually probably got it from her mom more than
Catherine, is she still doing her podcast?
Catherine's doing her podcast, Catherine for Real, and she's doing workshops and speaking and all that good stuff. Again, we talked about that this morning. Like, what do you really want to do with this? Where do you want to go with this?
Yep.
And she's like, I want to make an impact. I just want to continue to add value. I want to help people in their relationships because that's what Relationship Grit is all about. My wife and I wrote that book, and that's all about sticking together through challenging times and ups and downs. And so we wrote that together. So she's doing a lot of that. It's so funny. My wife's speaking, I'm speaking, my daughter's speaking, and my son thinks we're all crazy. So there you go.
Cole must think like, what is going on here?
He's like, what's wrong with these people? Cole's into insurance now, and he's into infinite banking, private banking, family banking, infinite banking. He's really into that, which is really cool. So I think he's found his passion.
I love the Gordon family. John, when I think of you, I think of incredible positivity. But I've heard you say that you're not by default a positive person, and you've suffered from, bouts of depression and anxiety and stress. And tell us a little bit about that shift that happened. And I think you were maybe around 35 or so. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think people know you now as this ultra positive person who's written all these impactful books. Tell us a little bit of the backstory.
Yeah, when you do this kind of work and you give these kind of talks and you write these books, people expect you to be a certain way naturally. They think, oh, I was always like this. And the truth is I wasn't. I had to work really hard to be positive because I naturally go towards the negative. I grew up in Long Island, New York, in a Jewish Italian family, a lot of food, a lot of guilt, a lot of wine, a lot of whining. And my dad was a New York City police officer, undercover narcotics. And so my dad was shot a few times. He was battling the drug cartels on the streets of New York. So he saw the worst in humanity. So he was not a very positive person, a loving dad, but one of the most negative guys on the planet. Like when I started speaking, he said, I can't believe people pay you to speak. When you're a kid, we paid you to shut up. Like, so that's what I grew up with. And so I grew up with a very, very negative mindset in a lot of ways. Like the world was out to get you and you have to take on this world. I think it made me strong in a lot of ways, but not always so positive. And then in my 20s, I struggled with, a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of worry, a lot of stress, a lot of overthinking. Have you noticed that overthinking is always associated with negative thoughts? Like we never say I have too many positive thoughts. Man, I'm overthinking. I'm just thinking too positive these days. It's always associated with negative thoughts. That goes to my book, The One Truth, that I just wrote, that I think is the most powerful book I've written. Everyone says it is, actually. It's a paradigm shifter. It's a thought leadership book. It's totally different. It changes the game in terms of mental health and how thoughts work and understanding the mind and the brain and how it all works together. And the more we have all these thoughts, then we have all this clutter, and clutter lowers your state of mind. And that's what negative thoughts do. And so I had a lot of negative thoughts, a lot of anxiety, fear. The root for the Greek word of anxious means to separate and divide. And so when you feel anxious, you actually feel separate and divided. What does fear do? Separates and divide. What do negative thoughts do? Separate and divide and weaken you and make you feel powerless. And that's how I felt. I felt powerless and I was losing the battle of my mind. It's why I wrote The One Truth, because I want to help all the people who were me, who were struggling, because there are more of me than ever now who are really struggling and anxious.
Far more,
and fearful and worried and stressed. So I get what they're going through, because that's what I went through. And a lot of it is always tied if you want to get deep, to a wound that we have. We all have a wound of our past. We all have a hole in our soul. And those negative thoughts come in or come out of that wound that we have. And it really infects us in many ways if we don't heal the wound. So those negative thoughts, that anxiety, that fear, it's letting you know that something is not quite right. It's letting you know that you're not meant to go through life that way. You're not meant to go through life with fear and worry, anxiety, and stress all the time. We're just not. That's not normal. We're meant to go through life with power and joy and peace and confidence and courage. So many of us are struggling that it's become normalized. Like, oh, you're dealing with that. I'm dealing with this. You're dealing with that. No, it's not meant to be that way. We're actually meant to be whole and healthy. And again, peaceful and powerful. So I want to bring people back to that because much of my life is more that way now. Do I still live with some stress at times? Yes. Some anxiety at times? Yes, but nothing like it was. And I now know how to win the battle of my mind. And that's what I'm teaching a lot now because I know how powerful it is. Because I wake up these days looking forward to the day, optimistic about the day, hopeful about the day, ready to take on the day, knowing that I have the power to impact the people and the situations and the environments around me. People always say we're a product of our environment. Yes and no, because some people grow up in a really difficult environment and they thrive. Other people grow up in the same exact environment and they really struggle. It's really not your environment. It's always your state of mind. Right. And your state of mind determines how you define the environment that you're in and impact the environment. So we have the ability to overcome our environment, to go beyond our environment, to thrive in spite of our environment. So it's letting people know the power they possess. So long answer to the fact that, yeah, I really struggled. I was definitely negative. My wife almost left me when I was 31 years old because I was being such a jerk. I lost my job during the dot-com crash. And it was in the midst of that I said, what am I born to do? Why am I here? Why am I so miserable? And that led me to then start writing and speaking and doing this work that has now changed my life and allowed me to impact so many others. But my whole quest has been, how can I get better? And now how can I help others get better on the journey? That's been my life's journey.
You talk a lot about high state of mind and low state of mind. Can you help us understand those two extremes and maybe tie it back into, we are having a mental health epidemic, and I'm curious your thoughts why is that, and does it tie to that high state of mind and low state of mind?
Yeah, high state, low state, not really extremes. It's the ebb and flow of life.
The roller coaster.
Yeah, the roller coaster, the ebb and flow of life and thought. And high state of mind is defined by a lot of clarity, a lot of focus, a lot of positivity. If you've ever been in the zone and had a zone experience, that's the ultimate high state of mind experience. Low state of mind is a lot of clutter, a lot of fear, worry, thought, anxiety. And when you're in a low state of mind and a circumstance happens, it bothers you, it affects you. When you're in a high state of mind, the same circumstance can happen and it doesn't. You rise above, you move forward, you move on. As a former athlete, when I'm in a high state of mind, I make a mistake, I'm like, all right, let's go, next play, I got this. It's okay. As an athlete, low state of mind, a bad mistake happens or I do something wrong, I fumble the ball, I'm like, oh, what is wrong with me? Future's hopeless. And now you're trying to fix something that you think is broken and you can't stop thinking about it and ruminating about it. So that's low state of mind, high state of mind. Understanding how the brain and thoughts work, everything comes down to two main frequencies, positive and negative. It's why everything in life is about positive and negative, because there are two main frequencies in the world. And the story about the two wolves inside of us, the positive wolf and the negative wolf, they fight all the time. Who wins the fight? The one you feed the most. That's a story about two frequencies. The story of Adam and Eve in the garden is a story about two frequencies. There's a story about, and the voice of God, and then there's the voice of the serpent. Which one would they listen to? The one that called them to more, called them to a life of abundance, or the one that called them to what they lacked and caused them to believe the lie? And so often we're believing the lie that we're not powerful, that we're not strong, that we don't have what it takes, that our future is hopeless. And we're believing those lies. Again, two main frequencies. One is an ancient Cherokee story. The other is an ancient Jewish story, a Hebrew story. And yet they both show the example of separation that exists. When we move from oneness to separateness, we move from positive to negative. It's why all mental health disorders report feelings of isolation, being alone, disconnected, and feeling separate. We even have terms like bipolar, separation, schizophrenia, split mind, a divided mind, separation. It's wild when you think about it. Everything comes down to oneness and separateness. Oneness, you have a high state of mind. The more connected you feel, you have a higher state of mind. The more separate you feel, you have a lower state of mind. When you feel separate, you have all this clutter, all these thoughts coming in. When you feel connected and you feel one, you have a lot of clarity and a lot of peace. That's why when people meditate, what happens? Less thought, less clutter. They feel more connected. So there's a power of that. Prayer, same thing. Prayer, you're connecting to the creator. Connection. We were made for connection. We weren't made to be isolated or alone or separate. What happened during the pandemic? People felt more and more separate and isolated. So you're asking me what's happening today. People are feeling more and more separate and isolated. The media, social media is reinforcing that separateness. There's more divisiveness in politics and in everything. And we're constantly being bombarded with negativity. So we're tuning into that negative frequency. And that negative frequency lowers our state of mind and separates us more and more. Whereas if we tune into the higher state of mind and the positive frequency, that elevates us and it unites us and it connects us. That's why when you have two people that have a higher frequency, elevated thought together, they join together, whereas they both go down and they have a lower level of frequency, they start to separate and divide. And so everything comes down to, again, oneness and separateness. And you can see it, how it's playing out. And then you can go to all these different factors, but the brain literally is an antenna, as I wrote about in The One Truth. 86 billion neurons in our brain. Each neuron has a transmitter and receiver. And one day I'm walking over a summer ago and I'm like, and I heard the brain's an antenna. I'm like, what? Came to me, the brain's an antenna. What? And it made, once I realized that, I'm like, oh, everything makes sense. You're either tuning into in that antenna, the positive or the negative. One uplifts, encourages, unites, love unites. One divides, fear divides. And everything comes down to that. It is that simple once you see it. And then you can become a Jedi in this world, knowing how to take on the world. But what's happening is a lot of people are having their antenna damaged by a lot of chemicals, by drugs, by too much substances that actually damage the mitochondria and the antenna of your brain. Great book called Brain Energy by Chris Palmer, where he talks about the actual mitochondria in your brain. And he says it's all about the mitochondria. But I asked him one time in an interview, I said, well, I believe the brain's an antenna. I said, can the mitochondria make up the antenna? He goes, yeah, of course, but it's still the mitochondria. I go, it's fine. It's fine. Because he's so big on the mitochondria. But it's the motherboard of our brain. So the more, for instance, you're taking in sugar and sugary drinks, and these kids are drinking so much sugary drinks, they're literally damaging the antenna of their brain. So they start to tune into more and more negative thoughts. And then they start to have more and more fear, worry, and anxiety. And then they think something's wrong with them. So then they start taking more and more medication, and that affects the antenna even more. And so you can actually see how this all plays out from damaging the antenna. And I'm convinced, can't prove this, but I'm convinced that negative thoughts, the more we have negative thoughts and we tune into those negative thoughts, we then start to have a lower frequency within our brain and our antenna. And then we tune into more and more negative thoughts. And that's why we get downward spirals. So that's why positive thoughts and practicing meditation and prayer and positive thinking and the words we think and the words we speak matter so much, because we have to elevate to that higher state of mind more often. And when you do, day in and day out, you literally change the energetic structure of your brain, of your mind, and what you're tuning into. And then the thoughts you think become the reality that you live. And I've lived this, because when I was in the peak of my misery and negativity, I read you can't be stressed and thankful at the same time. I started to research positive psychology. And so every day I would take a thank you walk and I practice gratitude. I still do that to this day. And I didn't know it then, but now in writing The One Truth, I know what happened. I was tuning into the positive every day, practicing gratitude, and then praying along the way. those walks of gratitude turn into walks of prayer. And literally doing that day in and day out over time, I was renewing and healing my mind and my soul, which then actually heals the brain and the body, which then uplifts you. And that's what happened to me, no doubt about it, when I look back.
John, why is it important to, I've heard you say this before, talk to yourself, don't listen to yourself?
Well, let's tell a story about Catherine, my wife. So about 9 months ago, she was complaining that she's getting old. Her body's breaking down. She goes, I'm sore all the time. She's like, I'm not going to be like I was when I was younger. I should just give up. It's hopeless. It's futile. She was being, Rick, really negative. I'm like, honey, come on. We can't be like that. We gotta be positive. She's like, shut up, positive guy. She did not want to hear what I had to say. So I go away to a speaking engagement and I'm gone for 2 days. And I was really glad to be gone those 2 days. She knows that. So I come back home and she's like a different person. She's all energetic and she's light and free. And she's being like really positive. I'm like, okay, like what happened? I'm gone for 2 days. I come home like, did you find a boyfriend or something? She goes, no. She goes, I was doing that health coaching with that company, and they do your blood work and they test your genes and your DNA. It's like this new advanced testing that's out there. And they told her, this is really rare. They said, we don't see this often. They told her, you have the genes of an Olympic athlete. So now she's walking around the house going, I am an Olympic athlete, you know. I am an Olympic athlete. She goes, you want to play tennis tomorrow? I'll crush you because I'm an Olympic athlete. No joke. She starts working out a lot because, you know, she's an Olympic athlete. She's training. The soreness goes away. The pain goes away. She stops complaining. Like her mindset changed completely. She was saying, I am. What would happen if we started saying, I am strong. I am powerful. I am healthy. I am a warrior. I am a child of God. I am here to make a difference and impact this world. I am a great teammate. I am a leader. Whatever it may be, you say, I am. So the words we speak become the life that we live. As a man thinks, he becomes. As a woman thinks, she becomes. So your words and your thoughts are truly powerful because we're more thought beings than we are physical beings. We're made of energy, equals MC squared. So we are truly made of energy. So what are thoughts? But thoughts are energy. Thoughts are vibrations. And what we think about and what we speak really becomes our reality. So the best advice I ever heard, going to your question, Dr. James Gills, he's the only person on the planet to complete 6 double Ironman triathlons. So that's an Ironman. Then a day later do another one. And the last time he did it, he was 59 years old. He was asked how he did it. He said, I've learned to talk to myself instead of listen to myself. He said, if I listen, I hear the fear, the negativity, the doubt, all the reasons why I can't finish this race. But if I talk to myself, I could feed myself with the words and the encouragement that I need to keep on moving forward. And a big part of this is to understand, real quick before we get into questions, where your negative thoughts come from. Because I ask people all the time, like, do your negative thoughts come from you? And a lot of times they say, yeah, of course they're in my head. Professional athletes say, yeah, they're in my head all the time. College athletes I work with, yeah, they're in my head. Here's my next question to them and to you. Who would ever choose to have a negative thought? Would you ever choose one? No. This blows people's mind. You would never choose one. They're always coming in. And that's the battle of our mind. We got the negative thoughts, the lower frequency coming in all the time, creating static. So you can't tune into that higher level thought. So you can't tune into that positive message that you need to tune into. That's the battle. Overcome the negativity with positivity. Win the battle of our mind, as I wrote in The One Truth, and also my book, The Garden. And that allows you to take on this world with power and peace and joy and confidence and courage.
I've got about 20 more questions for you, but unfortunately, I'm being overruled by our community here.
Sorry.
Dying to ask you questions. So I'm going to toss it over to them. Sunny in Arizona, you are up with the one and only John Gordon.
And is it sunny in Arizona?
Yes, right. Very fitting, huh? John, great to hear more of your story. I watched a video recently that you did with Matthew McConaughey, and the snippet was such like, absolute Matthew McConaughey style answer. And you asked him, what drives you to be so great? And the beautiful answer that he gave, which is something that, you speak a lot about, but like, why doesn't society, why don't people in general think more along the lines of how he responded, which was, I'd be embarrassed to not show up as my very best. Like, why aren't people embarrassed by that? And so I loved that conversation, but I'm curious, I want to flip the question around on you. What drives you after all of these books, after all of these talks, to continue to be so great?
All right, all right, all right. Well, it wouldn't be about the fact that I'm embarrassed, and I appreciated his answer, but that's definitely not mine. Dr. David Jeremiah says success is the fulfillment of God's plan for your life. And so for me, it's about fulfilling the life and the purpose of what I'm meant to do. And I have to pursue excellence in what I'm doing, because you have to give everything you have, because everything that you give is the caring essence of who you are. When I read a book, there's an essence in me that I'm sharing within that book. If it's a good book, it's the essence within you. And then people are reading and feeling that essence. Appearance is temporary. Essence is eternal. And so it's the essence that you're sharing that it literally has an eternal nature, even though it seems like it's a temporary thing. There's an eternal nature to it. So when you care, that care is eternal. So for me, I think it's about what legacy are you leaving? What kind of impact are you having? What kind of difference are you making? And caring matters, because my care in this very moment is an eternal moment to make an eternal impact. I know that's deep, but that's what I've realized why it's so important. Because think about it. If we're all going to die, why would it matter what we produce? Why does excellence even matter if we're all going to die? You say, well, for the next generation, but they're going to die too. And then the next generation, well, they're going to die as well. So why does anything actually matter if it's all temporary? Because it's not temporary. There's an eternal nature and there's an eternal essence. And that care and that excellence, for some reason, in the economy of God, truly matters. I'm a person of faith, as obviously you figured out already. There's a great quote by Martin Luther says, the Christian shoemaker doesn't honor God by putting crosses on shoes. He honors God by making great shoes. Like, God loves craftsmanship. God loves excellence. Like, we were created to not be average. We were created to produce excellence and do something great. So for me, there's just a desire and an internal nature within me to want to make something great. And I would also say, and be honest, there's an element of me, of everyone who has grit and wants to produce something great, there's an element that they don't want to be embarrassed or they don't want to fail. There's no doubt an element there. They don't want to create a piece of junk. And that's where the opinion of others at times does matter and could propel you in a good and healthy way, as long as it's a small part of what drives you. If it's everything, eventually that will become your demise. But there's a healthy nature of wanting to continue to prove that the work you're doing matters and that you're getting better and you're improving. I don't want my last work to be my best work. I want to keep on getting better and keep improving. But why? I would say because I was made that way and designed that way, and I think we all are.
Love it. And couldn't agree more. I think we were all created to absolutely leave our tanks completely empty.
My good friend Erwin McManus says that human beings crave three main things that drive us. We crave intimacy, meaning, and progress. Intimacy, connection, meaning, why do I matter? Why does this work matter? And progress, that progress is a scorecard. Like, most people want a scorecard. And I work with a lot of athletes. When they are now former athletes, I tell them, you need a new scorecard. You need a new scoreboard, because you've had one your whole life. And that's why you feel lost right now. You've got to create a new one. And it might be that I want to go impact this many people. But we all need a scoreboard. We need progress.
Thanks, John.
Great question.
All right. We have got so many questions, so please keep your questions as brief as you can.
And your answers brief too, John. Keep your answers brief.
John, you can go nuts. Chris Petruski, you're up.
John, pleasure to meet you today. I told Scott before the call, great day for me. I had a coaching call with Ben Newman this morning, and now I'm on here with you. This is fantastic. Awesome. My question is, you make so much of an impact on so many people in so many ways. Who has made the biggest impact on you?
So, so many people, definitely my mom and dad, no doubt about it. My dad, again, being that New York cop, even though he was negative, him being loving just impacted me. And he was actually my stepfather who raised me since I was 5. And I remember being a little kid in the garage and he said, I'm going to love you like my own and treat you like my own. And I want you to call me dad. And I did. And so he really took me on as his own and my brother as well and raised us. So he made a huge impact. My mom passed away at the age of 59 years old, and being 52 now, I'm like, wow, I got 7 years till my mom's age, which is wild to think about. So my mom definitely believed in me and was just my first, and I would say my best coach, and a very loving mom. So big impact on me. Ken Blanchard, the author of The 1 Minute Manager, he had a huge impact on me because he believed in me and wrote the foreword to The Energy Bus. And if he doesn't write that forward, I don't think that book gets out there like it does, and it doesn't make the impact that it's made. So Ken Blanchard, huge impact. And from a faith standpoint, Erwin McManus, as I mentioned him earlier, he had a huge impact on me as well from his sermons. From afar, didn't even know him years ago, listened to his sermons, really spoke to me, brought me to faith, actually. I was really into big in Buddhism and a New Ager, a seeker, which, again, very powerful and a great part of my journey that I'm very proud of. It was all part of the journey that led me to spirituality. But listening to Erwin really brought a new perspective to me that I needed, a new healing that I needed. And now we're like best friends. So it's pretty funny all these years later, he had impact me and now we're great friends.
John, thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Very cool. Chris in Chicago, you're up.
All right. Thank you so much, John. It's a pleasure speaking with you. You and I have very, very similar backgrounds in athletics, and I've been fortunate to speak to some college baseball teams myself. And I assume, was it Jack Leggett you were with Clemson when you spoke? Monty Lee?
Monty.
Yeah, I know those guys real well because I coached at Iowa. But nevertheless, I too, like you, believe in the power of positive thinking and whatnot. But I think as a leader, and due to recent experiences, I also think we have a responsibility to acknowledge reality and some of the significant impacts that all of us have had in our lives that impact that ability to think positively, that do require things like medication and therapy and some of the services that are available to better our mental health aside from the power of positive thinking. So what role do you think that has? And then what responsibility do you think you have in ensuring and advocating that folks think so as well?
Chris, I think it's interesting that you said that you brought up positivity and then brought to reality, as if positivity is not reality. So right there, the premise I think is something I don't really fully agree with, because being positive doesn't mean you ignore reality. It means you maintain optimism, belief, and faith in order to create a better reality. It means that you have hope for the future, which gives you power in the present to take one more action today. I would argue that positivity is the competitive advantage, because positive leaders are able to overcome their situation and their circumstances to move forward. Pessimists don't change the world. It's the optimist. It's the people who believe. It's those who confront their challenges. So this is not about ignoring challenges or ignoring the pains of the past. I think I have every responsibility, and so do you, and we all do, to acknowledge the wounds that people have experienced and the traumas of their past, and know that that's part of why they are struggling and what they're dealing with. And you'll find most addictions are many ways tied to wounds of the past and traumas and so forth. So understanding the whole holistic message and the whole holistic being of a human experience is very important. And understanding the healing that needs to take place is essential. And so everyone has a wound and everyone has a hole in their soul, and everyone has a wound that needs to be healed on this journey. There's no doubt about that. Patrick Lencioni, I just did an event together in Dallas, and we spent the whole afternoon, not planned, on wounds and healing with 75 top leaders from around the country and the world talking about this. Like, they didn't want to talk about business. They didn't want to talk about cost benefits analysis. They wanted to talk about wounds and healing, which is so important. So, but understanding how thoughts work are essential, and understanding medications and how medications affect the brain are essential. And knowing when to use them and when not to use them and not overprescribing them is also really essential. So those are all big factors where you just go see a doctor because you're struggling with anxiety and they say, take a pill. That may not be the best thing. It usually isn't the best thing to do right away. Understanding how thoughts work are essential. Talking to a 16-year-old who was suicidal in the ER 2 nights before and going out seeing psychiatrists and doctors. And I knew his mom. I said, let me talk to him. In one session, after teaching him the one truth and how negative thoughts work, because he was beating himself up for the negative thoughts in his head. Once he understood that he was the hero in his own epic story, and that every hero will have to overcome negativity and challenges to define themselves and create their future and ultimately save the world. Every hero will have to overcome that. You have to do it with positivity to overcome negativity. Everything changed with this young man because he stopped beating himself up. He realized the thoughts were not coming from him. He didn't have to listen to the lies that they were telling him. He started speaking truth to the lies. And I reached out to him just the other day. It's been over a year now. How you doing? Doing great, Mr. Gordon. High state of mind. The next day after talking to him, his parents said, what did you do? He's fine. I just share with him the truth. Done this with a number of kids recently, number of teenagers, because I have a lot of friends who read the one truth. Their kids are struggling, and I will talk to them. I don't charge for that. I'll talk to them. And seeing this, we need a new paradigm shift. We need to give mental health professionals better tools to deal with the epidemic that we're dealing with, because more people are struggling than ever, suffering than ever, and we're prescribing more medications than ever, and we're seeing more doctors than ever, and yet it's still getting worse. So clearly we're not addressing the problem that exists. So we have every responsibility to provide the tools that is necessary and to talk about this in this way. And I feel like I've taken on the major responsibility of doing that. Be a lot easier for me just to keep writing my, positive books, keep selling millions of copies there, instead of writing a one truth book that is very deep and profound. And I really feel like addresses the problem and the issue, but I felt called to do it. I had to do it. So I hope that answers your question, but yes, positivity and reality coexist. And Dr. Amen and I got in a big argument on this on my podcast because he had a post where he said that positive thinking, he goes, I don't believe in positive thinking. He goes, that's like eating the third hamburger and think it won't make you gain weight. I said, Dr. Amen, that's not positive thinking. That's stupid thinking. There's no such thing as positive thinking associated with that. So to me, you can tell I'm getting fired up about this. I feel like it's my job to talk about real positivity. And I think too many people think about positivity as roll your eyes positivity or toxic positivity or fake positivity. And people don't address the issues. Positive leaders are demanding. They're not demeaning. Positive leaders practice love and accountability. They love their teams, but they hold them accountable to their standards. Positive leaders pursue excellence because they believe the best is yet to come. They take the actions necessary to create the best outcome. Positive teams come together and work together, address their issues, their challenges, and work to get better from that. So my hope is that positivity, real positivity, leads to greater healing. And in the one truth, I wrote about the wounds that we have and how we are meant to heal the wounds. That's the whole journey of life. Heal the wounds, grow from that healing, and now go heal others. Healed people help and heal others. Hurt people hurt others. And that's why we need to heal. Thanks,
Scott,
Chris.
you were recording that, right? John, I couldn't have said it better. And you absolutely have an ally in me in that thinking. So
thanks, Chris.
so
I
appreciate
appreciate that question big time.
Dan,
Thanks,
the
Chris.
man. Dan used to work for our mutual friend, Jesse Itzler, John. Dan, you're up.
Thanks, Scott. John, I had obviously the pleasure of seeing you speak for the first time after you wrote The Energy Bus through Coach Smith, and you were working on training camp. And then I had the pleasure of speaking with you this summer. So thank you for all you do. I had a bunch of questions, but you were answering as we were going through it. So I'm just going to ask, what kind of two-part question for you, John? What's something you've always wanted to do, but haven't done it yet, and why?
Oh, Dan, great question, Dan. Love that. I want to do a movie based on training camp. So I'd love to do a movie based on training camp. I've had the vision. I've had 3 screenplays written, cost me about $60,000, and have not done any of them because they were horrible screenplays. So have not moved forward with that. So since then I've been holding back, waiting for the right opportunity, going, all right, God, if I'm meant to do this, you got to bring me a great screenplay writer when it's meant to happen. So if it's meant to happen, again, I'm always open. Maybe it's not, but I'd like to do a movie on screenplay, on a movie on Training Camp, a movie on The Hard Hat. So those are two movies I'd like to produce based on my books.
What about a documentary?
I don't think a documentary. I think, a movie of The Hard Hat would be great. The parents, and I've told the parents that of George Boyardi, who the book's about, who passed away and was hit in the chest with a ball and died on the field. It's an incredible story. All the proceeds from my book, The Hard Hat, go to support George's foundation and other work and nonprofits associated with Cornell. I basically, I won't make a dime off that or on the movie. I told the parents I will not make a dime, but I want to do a movie based on his life. And they're such private people. They just don't want the movie out right now. And so unfortunately we haven't been able to do it, but that's something I'd love. If you ask me what I'd love to do, it's that.
All right.
Love it.
Thanks, Dan.
Raquel in Texas, you're up.
Woohoo! Howdy, y'all. Hi, John. Thank you so much for the opportunity and your time. I'm having the pleasure of witnessing like these moments of perpetual mic drops, and it's amazing. So thank you.
Thank you.
My question to you revolves around the word legacy. You mentioned it earlier, and for me, legacy is extremely elemental in everything that I do in life. And leaving a legacy of unity and diversity, embracing all of that is very important to me. So giving your experience in different working environments and working with different organizations, what key principles do you think, or do you find that are universally fostering pretty much a positive culture? What do you think are the universal, I guess, what am I trying to say here? Principles, just basically principles or standards that lead to a positive culture or a culture that embraces diversity?
So such a great question in terms of of culture. I wrote a whole book on it called The Power of Positive Leadership, and also a book called Soup on creating a culture of greatness. So it would take a while to answer the question fully, but in terms of diversity, culture is all about knowing what you stand for. And once you know what you stand for, every decision you make is easy. So what are the core values that guide us? And I talk about oneness a lot, but oneness doesn't mean sameness. So I believe in diversity of people, diversity of thought, diversity of ideas. But I'm not big on diversity of core values, because I think you have to identify what your core values are. And an organization, a team has to stand for those values. I think our country, for instance, in America, we've gotten away from what America stands for, and you have to understand what we stand for. And then from there, everyone could rally around what we stand for together. The thing is, everyone stands for different things now, and that's why you have so much divisiveness. So if we could say, for instance, freedom, I stand for freedom. I believe America stands for freedom, the beacon of light and hope in the world. That means everything we should do should be about freedom, whether it's freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of ideas. We should allow all of that. And we should also, for instance, we should actually recognize when the criminal justice system might be imprisoning a whole class of people and a whole group of minorities that as a result of oppression and so forth in our justice system. So, and having a dad who's a former police officer, I can say that. So I don't agree with that. So I agree that everything should once you know what you stand for, then that should guide what you do and how you think along the way. So as a culture of a company, this is what we stand for. These are our values, and diversity may be one of our core values that we stand for. And we're going to have diversity in who we hire. We're going to have diversity of thought, diversity of opinion, diversity of feedback, diversity of customers we want to go after, whatever it may be. You ingrain that into who you are. To me, diversity is also valuing everyone, knowing that everyone has value. And then you include everyone. You give people a seat at the table, and they're involved in your decision-making process. They're involved in your concerns and care about what you're addressing. But you also have to understand your market. You have to understand what your business is about. And every business is going to be different along the way. I mean, I had a bar in Buckhead when I was 24 years old. I knew my audience was, young preppies, who lived in Buckhead in their 20s. That's who I was going after. Now, I allowed anyone who wanted to come in would come in, but I knew who my target audience was for my business. And I think that's okay to be a business owner and say, I know who my target audience is. So you have to give people, but you shouldn't discriminate against anyone, if that makes sense.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough
Paul
question.
in Florida, you're up.
Oh, John, first, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and grateful to have you here. I heard a quote the other day from someone you probably know really well, Tim Story, and he said that once you touch the fire, you can't live in the smoke. And I know for me, I've been finding that self-awareness is really like the ultimate superpower. I've observed from your conversation, you lead your life through intuition, and I feel like I'm getting to that point. And I'm wondering, what tips or strategies do you have for kind of living through your heart versus a lot of people living through their head?
Yeah. I won't write a book unless there's something to be said, unless I do feel it in my heart. I do think it goes back to taking those walks every day and connecting with the creator. I do believe in a God, and I believe that God made us for a connection, and oneness goes back to, in that connection, you receive ideas, you receive insights, you receive wisdom, you receive guidance. And I basically follow that guidance and that wisdom and that intuition. And a lot of times my prayer is, God, make it idiot proof, because I'm an idiot. I'll say that, like, make it so simple and clear that I know there's no other way, that I'm meant to do this. And that prayer, that walk in my life, the more I follow it and I obey it and I honor it, the more I see it strengthened, and I keep living more and more that way. And I've noticed I've become more and more powerful living that way. And so to me, I'm living by the spirit, not the flesh. And I think that's the key. Romans 8:5-6 says, a mind governed by the flesh leads to death. A mind governed by the spirit leads to life and peace. To me, that says everything right there. And you can see this play out in the world. Am I living according to the flesh? The drugs, the porn, all the negative influences out there, all the foods that make us sick, all the things that are not good for us. And that's the flesh. And then there's the spirit, and that brings life and peace. Do I take time to connect? Am I connecting to love? Am I connecting to God, to stillness, to silence, to joy, to peace? And the more I can connect to that, which energize me, that encourage me, that give me hope and power, I start to gain more and more power over time. And you do this for a day, won't have a huge impact. Do it for a week, you'll start to see a difference. Do it for a month, do it for a year, do it for a lifetime. Now I've been doing it for 20 years. My life is a testament to that. Trust me, I am not anything special. I just take the time to listen and connect and follow that and live from the heart.
Wow, powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you again for your Power of Positivity Summit. It's something that I've gone to the past 3 years and met a lot of game changers. So thanks,
you. Paul. Yeah, we try to find the gems out there, people who people may not know of, and have them speak. And again, it's all free, so it's a lot of fun.
Doug, we're staying in Florida. You're up.
Thank you, Scott. John, phenomenal. As Scott said, I am in Florida. This is for me and my brother Randy. Massive Heat fans. Any insight you can give us to that Heat culture, whether it's Spoelstra, anybody, anything, I am ready to listen. Go.
Boom. So incredible culture, amazing leaders. I just had the chance to speak to their leadership team again this year. Over the years, I've worked with their team, speaking to the players, the coaches, but Pat Riley was in 2 of my talks, which is probably the most intimidated I have ever been, speaking into a room, in a locker room. There's Pat Riley. We're right there. Pretty cool moment, but a great guy. They're special. They know what they stand for, and they know they're not for everyone. And they're very clear to other players who may want to join the team. Like, this is who we are. And if you come here, this is the way it's going to be. And it's not the right fit if you're not like that. So they're very clear. They know what they stand for. And I love Eric Spoelstra because this is his leadership style. Eric would tell you that he never had a desire to be the head coach, never needed to be the head coach. He was chosen to be the head coach. He clearly, and for years, just wants to serve the Heat organization. And he wants to serve Mickey Aronson, the owner, and Pat Riley, the coach, and now the GM. He wants to serve their vision and carry on the tradition and the culture. and steward it. He says he's a steward, and steward that along the way. And that's his goal. And he's all about being a servant leader, and he's always getting better. It was me, Chip Kelly, Sean McVay, Eric Spoelstra. We're having dinner, and Chip started sharing some ideas. Sean shared ideas. I shared ideas. Eric pulls out his notepad, and he starts jotting down all these notes on his notepad right then and there. Like, still a student, still learning, and he's always looking for the edge. How could he be a better coach? How can he help develop his players so they can get better? He's always looking for the edge. And I got a chance to speak to the One Truth to them about the leadership team, about being a united, connected team, and how to help their players have a higher state of mind while they're playing. So, yeah, it's really cool. It's a special organization. I'm just honored that I get to share with them, and I'm thankful that I've become really good friends with Eric and just love the kind of leader that he is. He makes me a better leader watching how he leads.
Phenomenal insight. Thank you so much. You totally just thread the needle for me.
Thanks. Doug.
Maybe nobody else but me. Thank you.
Yeah, other people are like, who are the Miami Heat? Who are they?
I am apologize that we are out of time. So if you had a question and it didn't get to you didn't get to ask John, I apologize. But John, this has been an unbelievable hour, and I wanted to thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, buy his books.
Read the One Truth. I hope everyone reads the One Truth. I really hope everyone, and again, not promotional. Like, I really hope people read it and share
100%.
it so we can impact
buy the One
mental
Truth.
health.
Write a review on Amazon. John, we're a community, the Outlier Project, 700 people throughout the country or throughout the world, 34 countries represented. So lots of people will see this on replay. What can we do as a community to support you?
Wow, great question. And by the way, just incredible. I love that you have all these meetups. I was watching in the beginning, like, so cool that you have this community where everyone joins and all these events. Like, Scott, what you're doing is totally incredible. I'm a huge fan. Like, amazing what you're creating. So thanks for having me on. Huge honor to share. I love sharing these ideas, as you can tell. I love talking about this. I talk about this when I'm not working. I talk about this all the time. I get together with people. There is no separation between my work and my life. Like, I think that's a key attribute. I think it's something that people need to understand. Like, if you truly want to be great at something, there's not going to be a separation. If you're truly doing what you love and what you're passionate about, it's all about that. So what people could do to support me, I would love for you to read The One Truth, share that book out there. Let's get that book as popular as the Energy Bus, because it needs to be, because the more people who read it, they will understand how thoughts work. They'll win the battle of their mind. They'll help others win the battle of their mind. And they will actually go through the healing process, hopefully understanding that the healing of their mind and their soul is the ultimate key for their journey of creating a successful life. Like, you can't be successful in life if you don't do that. You can have temporary success, temporary business success, but over time, your constraint will cause you to crash. Your wound will eventually cause you to fall apart and crumble. And so reading that One Truth will lead people on a journey of wholeness, of health, of healing, and just like practical tips to win the battle of your mind day in and day out. I know I'm getting deep with that, but just winning day in and day out. That's what it's all about. So I would just love your help in sharing the One Truth out there. And then just pray for my kids, Cole and Jade. You know, Cole's now big on insurance. Jade is now speaking. Just pray for them and their impact. And, you know, now that they're embarking on this journey as adults, hard being a parent these days. I think it's harder as a parent with adult kids than it was when they were younger. Yep. But I always ask people to pray for them.
Love it. John, happy holidays to you, Catherine, Jade, and Cole. And again, really, really appreciate all your time.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, everyone. Amazing group. You guys are awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining, guys.
Thanks, John.
I wish we had more time, but
me too. I'm going down to Tampa to go speak at an event. Oh,
thank you, John.
One other thing, people, they just follow me on Instagram at John Gordon 11, JON Gordon 11. I don't know if that was put in there, but would love to just stay in contact with people.
Awesome.
And then also my weekly positive tip. I'm still sending out after all these years, since 2002. Every week I write a different positive tip. And this week was 5 myths about mindset, 5 myths of mindset, because there's so many myths out there that are being perpetuated. Like, people are afraid of success. No, we're not afraid of success. We're actually afraid of failing while striving to be successful.
Yep.
We're afraid that we don't deserve success. So we don't deserve it. So we never really feel like worthy of it. So it's really a feeling of unworthiness. No one's afraid of success. So I address issues like that. So you can go to my website to sign up for that. Yeah, there's a link that's put there right now. All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Look at John's post today on success of the day and how
Yeah.
you can incorporate that even with your kids. It's phenomenal. Really, really good. John, thanks again, brother.